Hi everyone, welcome to Talking Tech with Legal IT Insider. I'm your host, Caroline Hill, and I'm here to talk about the adoption of CoCounsel at Acuity Law. And we're taking a future gazing look and looking at some next steps, having spoken to Acuity in podcast 1. So if you're coming to this now, go to podcast 1. For podcast 2, I'm here again with Claire Cooper, who is transformation lead and solicitor at Acuity. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for having me back.
Thanks so much for joining me. So in podcast 1, we talked a little bit about the background to Acuity's adoption of CoCounsel. We looked at some of the sort of practical steps that you've taken in terms of helping fee earners to understand the technology and the processes that you've followed in rolling the tech out across the majority of the firm, and some of your learning along the way. So I'd really encourage people to listen to podcast 1 for that. This session, as I said, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into some of the sort of future gazing and next steps, and we're going to be talking about we're taking a deep dive into your HighQ adoption around CoCounsel, and also looking at Westlaw AI. So talk about and just to stress it, so HighQ, these are early doors. This is a great of you to chat because it is quite early doors. Talk to me about your adoption of HighQ.
Yeah, so with HighQ at the moment, we're in testing, and we've split the testing out into a couple of different phases, and we've just completed phase 1. So phase 1 was utilizing Thomson Reuters HighQ instance. So it means that we're in a position where we're using their data, their documents, and we're going through the due diligence review process within their instance. So it's a bit of an unusual compared to our standard expectations. And so it's trying to work with some of those things. So a nuance, for example, is that they were using US documents, because in product at the moment with Thomson Reuters, everything starts in the US and then rolls across to the UK. What we've developed out for that is a scorecard to be able to do both legal analysis, because the accuracy, the conciseness, and the capability of being able to kind of almost copy paste what's being provided is incredibly key, but also then the actual usage of the features and the workflows and how usable they are within a due diligence project. So we've done. Sorry,
can I interrupt you for 2 seconds? Can you just explain to people, and sort of apologies for butting in, but just before we do that sort of a deep dive on that, talk to me about what you're hoping it will look like at a slightly high level, in terms of, because obviously we're talking about HighQ within the context of CoCounsel, and perhaps for people who aren't perhaps as familiar with what that will look like, could you just paint a picture for people of what that will look like, what HighQ, and I think maybe I wasn't quite so clear at the beginning, but what HighQ will look like within the context of CoCounsel, within the context of Acuity.
Okay, so where HighQ is at the moment, and also CoCounsel Core, is that CoCounsel Core is the flagship product for Thomson Reuters, and then HighQ is the collaboration product that sits as an extension of Core. However, they're planning on developing both of these products over the next year. So it's a case of some of the things that are inside HighQ will end up inside Core. And so where we were at the beginning when we started this testing, we've now kind of shifted some of our strategy, because Core is going to have the ability to collaborate. It's going to have the ability to collaborate with clients. It's going to be a client portal inside. So these are kind of traditional features that sit inside HighQ. And so the use cases for most law firms are the heavy lift. So where you have an awful lot of documents that you need to review, whether that's corporate due diligence, whether that's commercial contracts, and you're needing to find either precise information, or you're needing to do a significant review of all of the documents with a particular question or query. And so the decision to kind of, how do we build out HighQ and what do we do next with it, has adjusted slightly for us at the moment. But HighQ is essentially there to do that heavy lift work, and has the ability as well to kind of be a front door for clients as well.
Yeah, and maybe that was really obvious to everybody else. So carry on. Apologies for butting in.
No, no, not at all. So yeah, we're in a position now where we're going to go to phase 2 of testing, which is us using our documents and our information to be able to really do a side-by-side comparison. So until now, we haven't been in a space of being able to really establish what does the ROI look like and what does it do comparable between what HighQ is going to be capable of with the integration with Core, but also what will Core be able to do in the future, given that they're also building out those capabilities for due diligence. So it's kind of a back to basics again, having a look at the use cases that we've got or we've already built out, and then being able to understand where is the most impact, but also what's the path of least resistance, because the teams have had a lot of change. And HighQ, comparable to Core, is much more of a personalized product, whereas Core is at a place where it's essentially built as intended, and then we just go in and we're able to use it. So as long as we've got what we need from our side, the prompting, the use cases, the understanding of what the legal analysis will look like and what the outputs will look like, then we're covered. Whereas HighQ has a little bit more of an expectation around building out. So we're in a space of testing both, and hopefully by kind of end of January, February next year, we'll be in a place of understanding which one is the right fit for us at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And so just to go a bit of a deeper dive, so you're mapping it specifically for M&A transactions, legal decision points, and document handling. That can you tell us just to share a tiny bit more?
So when we're talking about due diligence, we're talking about in particular the due diligence questionnaire. So at the outset of a corporate due diligence matter, you will have a bunch of documents that the other side will upload into their data room, and you will have a set questionnaire which the firm has normally agreed is the standard expectation list. That does sometimes change depending on the type of client that you've got. So the more kind of experienced clients might have less information, but be very detailed on other certain criteria. And then others will be very high level. It can really depend on which segment of the market you're looking at. Is this a fixed fee? Is this something that is a corporate client? It really kind of depends on each case. You upload your kind of due diligence questionnaire. It will run an analysis on the documents then that are inside the data room for you, and spit out kind of a review of what documents are missing, what additional information is required, and actually run an analysis on the documents themselves as well for you. So it's the very, very first step of due diligence.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing that you're doing, which is really exciting, is you're testing the new Westlaw AI integration. And I know here you're looking at you've been able to capture ROI. I think it's always how to capture ROI has been a challenge. I feel like this has been a year actually where I've seen some progress, but it's still it still can be a challenge. So really keen to talk about that data capture exercise, but just briefly just talk about the Westlaw AI integration you're working on.
So the Westlaw AI integration is with Core, but there's also the standalone. So you have Westlaw Edge, which is just the usual website, but the upgrade with AI inside it. And then the fee earners will choose which one they prefer out of the two. Okay. The honest answer at this stage, because integrations take time, is that they prefer how Westlaw Edge handles some of the information, but they will flex between the two. And we don't mind that, right? It's whatever works best for them. And they love it so much that they lobbied for us to get this upgrade in particular once we'd run through the testing. So I think that there's no higher validation for a piece of technology than when the fee earners go out of their way to say, we want this. So we did that through kind of a very kind of brief test run. So it was 4 weeks split into 2 phases. So first 2 weeks was a very, very small test team of no more than 4 people. And then second week was a trial amongst all of the kind of the litigation teams that kind of signed on to do it. And it was a case of trying to get them to do enough tests as we were going through. So we kind of had minimum criteria expectations. And then, as you were kind of referring to just then, we also then had in the background the scorecarding and the kind of the building out of ROI off the back of that scorecard data.
Yeah. And again, so this, you were sort of taking a quite agile sprint-based approach to it.
Yeah, well, it was, I suppose there's two reasons for it. One is that we were concerned, or I was concerned about the teams getting fatigue, because there have been a lot of asks this year. You know, it's very easy to say, how do you get ROI? But the way that you do that is through the fee earners, right? And they have to commit to doing that, and then also testing and using. So I wanted to make sure that in their minds it was going to be a very finite amount of time, so that they would be able to focus just on delivering what we needed, which again is simple because they're doing that in amongst the rest of their day. And then the second piece to that is because we had other kind of activities and priorities that were kind of hashing in with this. So it was trying to make sure that we could get everything out that we needed to within the timescale that we had. I
think it's interesting. So the scorecard, it's interesting with, you said that there's no better indication than Fiona's lobbying. I quite like the mental image of that, but anyway, in terms of them lobbying, but anyway.
Oh, they did. I assure you. I got every day I had Teams messages.
But like, so what ROI means, I mean, actually, Fiona's being happy with it is I think a very good indicator personally. But so you know, what sort of thing were you testing for? So are you able to say in terms of the scorecard just briefly?
Yeah, of course. So there was a couple of expectations, and it did change as we went through this testing phase to kind of try and make it, as I referred to earlier, as clickable as possible, so that they didn't have to take too much time. So everything is designed to be a unit of work, no more, and ideally no more than kind of 2 minutes worth of their time to complete. So the first piece of that is kind of segmenting where within the life cycle of the matter we're looking at. So we've got for litigation, is it a new client or potential new clients? We know that that's likely to be non-chargeable work, pre-litigation, and then inside kind of litigation itself and kind of wrapping up of the matter. Then it's about ease of use, how capable was the CoCounsel in particular of being able to provide the output that they wanted. Was it concise enough? Were we in a position where there was enough accuracy? So all of these are kind of marked out of 5 so that we can get a very quick kind of click-through rate. And then it's 2 kind of final questions in the scorecard, which are around things like, how long does this task normally take you to do with the AI? How long did it take you to do with the AI? And then is it chargeable or non-chargeable? So we can get a sense of how much time are we saving that's shadow time and often written off or doesn't even kind of end up inside the CRM, and how much of it is chargeable, so that we've got to be careful with some teams because it's fixed fee or it's not. And where it's not, we've got to be kind of more careful about pricing. And then the final piece is kind of more from a knowledge position of how did it improve your analysis of the case. So are you feeling like you're more strategic? Have you learned something new? Is there anything that you've improved skill-wise off the back of this? And so when it came to the conclusion of this overall trial, we've now also got a knowledge scorecard, which is separate to this kind of tracker that tries to develop ROI specifically. And the knowledge scorecard is trying to get a sense of where you were and where you are post AI, because there's so much more capability inside the AI now to be able to kind of, at a snip of your fingers, have the information that you never would have had without hours and hours of research, right? So you don't have that brain drain. You're in a space where you're able to just look at what you need to. And we're trying to kind of understand and track that kind of shadow ROI, which are things like, I no longer have to go to the partners for X and Y. I just do it myself. If I had additional training to do this and that, I would not have to have a second round of kind of corrections, or the AI has reduced that capability. So there's a lot of I think we're trying to kind of get into the depths now of what is the real overall day-to-day impact, as opposed to just trying to do an ROI calculation, because that's not too hard. If you want to do a very top line ROI calculation, you can do that. If you really want to understand the depths of what does it actually provide the firm, you've got to really start to kind of get into the nuances of everything and try and track some of this information. So we had alignment with the partners that if we upgraded, there was buy-in that at set times within a matter cycle, the fee earners would be utilising the Westlaw piece. And then that we'd also be surveying them throughout the year so that we would be able to actually track the ROI that we'd forecasted off the back of the data they'd already provided. We actually think that the ROI will be significantly higher because we've only asked for kind of a bare minimum use case throughout a matter life cycle just to get everybody up and running. Yeah. So it's likely to be a significant shift in how we work as well. And also from a customer perspective, they've saved hours, you know, in particular for potential new clients, where the turnaround at the beginning is very important. Like, how responsive are you? How persuasive are you? Right at the outset really, really matters. So we've found quite a significant amount of capability, and not all of it's quantifiable, right? So, but there's still significant value with it.
It's so funny, isn't it? I've heard a lot. I was at a user conference the other week, and they were saying, someone was saying, we don't want to hear any more about time saving, because time saving doesn't mean anything unless you're going to do something with it. And how does that translate into the bottom line? And I was like, we had a big discussion about it. I was like, I think it means a lot. And he's like, it doesn't mean it anyway. But so on the subject of time, it then naturally leads on to pricing, pitching.
Time is still important, right? Like I think it is important because it is the baseline and it's the foundation of how lawyers work. So even the ones that tend to do fixed fee still tend to think in units. It's how the entire industry at the moment tends to follow. So I don't think you're wrong in saying that. It's just that it doesn't have, it's the top of the iceberg, not the beneath of the iceberg, and that's what we're trying to tackle now.
So safe to say we haven't got time anyway to dive massively into ROI, but safe to say that you are saving a significant amount of time and it's delivering significant amount of value. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's also customer centric in a way that we've never been able to deliver before, you know. So it's got that ability to turn around something that would take sometimes days. In particular, when you're thinking about the hierarchy of checking work that happens in a law firm, right? It's never just the junior that does the work and then it goes straight out. Somebody's always taking a look, and then that might be somebody more senior if it's a particular client or a particular ask. And so that entire process is sped up dramatically, and that for customers is huge.
Yeah. So very briefly, sadly we're at time again, but so in terms of, I know that you know, you're now looking, the firm's now looking at the kind of what's next. I mean, it's very much still on the journey. It's not like it's done and dusted. That's out of the way, but it's very much still, you know, part of the journey. But you're now looking ahead, and you know, you are thinking about, naturally, as other firms are, about what this means for pricing and pitching. Have you come, because you know, I do think that you guys have been pretty far ahead in this journey. Where are you at in those kind of conversations in terms of what this means, what the adoption of this technology means for those things?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, and I won't go too much into the ROI piece, but the EBITDA is definitely something that we're trying to kind of tackle, and some of that is around, like, how do we get the fee earners to do the things that we need them to do within the systems, but also how do we kind of really deep dive on some of this analysis to get what we need out of it to be able to kind of come up with those types of stats. I can definitely say for sure we've had a positive impact, but we're not in a stage yet of being able to kind of verify with a number. I would love to. And I think the next step of that is pricing, you know, pricing and the types of clients that we are pitching to, and we have started to do that. So I think one of the biggest things when I talk to some of the corporate team is, you know, they say, look, I've worked for X or Y law firm in the past, and this is how we would pitch for work, and I can't get that work. because we don't have the type of bench, which just means the kind of the depth of fee earners that they do in a bigger law firm, because we're only a mid-tier. And what CoCounsel is providing to us is that bench. And so what we're trying to do now is to get into a space of being confident that it can deliver a certain level of turnover and kind of, I suppose, just ability to be able to pitch in front of those people and say, we can do what they can because we have this. And this is how we'll do it. And this is how we'll land that revenue for you. And being in a position of not having to, I suppose, play the small game, you know, and I don't mean, we have some very big clients, but it just gives us that little bit extra space. And I think for mid-tier firms, this is, if we get this right, it's game changing compared to maybe for what some of the other kind of bigger law firms have, because we've got that ability to just be a bit sleeker with what we're doing and move faster on it.
Yeah, I think that's such an advantage of the smaller firms. I see it, you know, with the big firms where perhaps they've got bigger resource in a lot of cases, but they do, you know, they do struggle in terms of how fast they can move. Not in every case, but I do feel like this could be a real leveler. And do you know what? That seems like a really good note, aside from the fact that we're past time. That seems like a really good note to end on. And once again, I really appreciate you making the time to talk to me. It's always fascinating, Claire, and you know, getting your insights from, you know, from actually living and breathing this is so important to everybody listening, including me. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm really grateful to have done both these podcasts. So do listen to the other one as well. And yeah, it's been great to speak to you again.
Thank you.